There's been a couple of moments where, like, I stop and I judge and, like, wait a minute. Wait, am I really hungry? Am I just eating because I'm allowed to? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well then, you should go by your hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Just let that be the gauge. And I'm finding a really fascinating thing where by the time, like, I'm really not hungry for real dinner. Like, I'm into, like, bigger lunches, but, like, around 3. But then I'm really just like a little tiny snack kind of thing. That's what my body wants. That's what makes it happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you just need to make sure you have food available if you can't buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really quite simple and easy.
Uh-huh.
It's basically, don't you agree, the way you would have your children eat?
The way
yeah, wouldn't you have your children eat that way? It's like, eat when you're hungry.
They do.
Yeah, have enough food. You pack your kids food when they need more food, and it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and it is really simple. And it's just a very interesting thing. It's just really, really interesting, and it feels very freeing.
Mm-hmm.
And like yesterday, I had a lunch with a good friend of mine, and then my crew from this job that I was doing in Times Square at the best diner in the universe. I mean, I don't even know why they call it a diner. It's more of like a French kind of restaurant. It just doesn't feel like a diner. We had this incredible arugula salad with avocado and blackened salmon, and it was spectacular. Spectacular. Every bite was just like, and it's so fascinating because I'm finding like the flavor of the food just tastes better.
Well, yeah, because there's no mental like processing occurring. You're just accepting it the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes things so much better. Yeah, the problem with having an eating disorder or disordered eating is that everything's about some concept about the food. An idea of what's in it, how it should be, what it's supposed to be, what it's not, what it's lacking, or this grandiose kind of like, oh, it's so healthy. Oh my God, it's so good, it's healthy. But, it's all mentally constructed. It's not really an actual experience.
Yeah. Well, you'll be really proud of me too then, because, like, I mean, New York is famous for certain things, like cheesecake.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was little, cheesecake was one of my most favorite things in all the world. Like up there with peanut butter. And so like I got a piece of cheesecake for the table, and I was like, this would be really great with coffee right now after. And everyone was like, that's a great idea.
Yummy.
And everyone enjoyed it so much, and it was just wonderful. And the crazy part was I was full for hours after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was satisfied.
Yeah, but what you're told is that, oh, that's sugar, it's addictive, you're going to be hungry with a shorter period of time, you're going to end up eating more, and you're craving more, and you're going to want more. That's not really what happens when you get rid of that emotional fear and judgment around it, right? Yeah, it's really freeing.
Absolutely.
Did you notice that you didn't have any, like, incessant thoughts and thinking about it? And, like, one of the things that I remember when I was in that, kind of had an eating disorder, it's like perpetual thoughts. It's obsessing about what was in the food, how many calories in it, how do I balance out the next meal, what do I have to do with my exercise. It took over the day. And food had the power to ruin my day. So if I had eaten something that was considered fattening, sugary and higher in calories, I would have massive anxiety and panic attacks and shame and guilt and just the horror of how I ruined the day. So the whole rest of the day would be focused on binging because I had ruined the day. Why even impose any strict rules anymore? It's been ruined. So it just had that the power over my life to such a degree that I couldn't imagine ever living with food again without that type of like dark space, or just the fact that it could just take over my life, my day. So how did it feel to just have it and be done with it?
Amazing.
Now that to me is like, yes, the food tastes good, it's pleasurable, but what's really amazing is the fact that you move on with your day. Like it doesn't latch on like an alien sucking on your body that you can't get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know forever, like what I would do is like, okay, I may have one thing, but I'm getting something based on like what is supposed to be healthy, and I have not satisfied what I'm craving. So that's what makes me go after these little snacks of like nibbling on this and nibbling on that.
Yeah, it's never really enough.
To, like, quote, be good.
Yeah.
And then it's like this downward spiral of hell. Whereas it's like, if you just have what you want when you want it.
Without the shame and the guilt. The key is without feeling there's something wrong with it. Like you shouldn't have to sit there and justify it and reason around it. Yeah, a very difficult part of recovery for a lot of people is they give themselves that freedom. Okay, Robin said I can eat what I want, so I'm going to do that. But I can only have a little bit. So I'm not dieting. I'm not dieting because I'm giving myself the freedom to eat these foods. But then in the back of their mind, they're saying, but I can only have this much because if I eat more than that, then I'm going to gain weight. And that's that underlying background noise, right? What you're describing is different. It is enjoy the food, listen to your body. Nothing's been ruined. Do you see why you have this freedom? Do you really understand why the freedom and it's the ease around it, why that exists?
Well, I know I had to be ready.
Well, yes, but ready for what? What is it that you...
Like, just drop this anxiety, this, like, thing, this self-shaming, this constant self-hatred and self-shaming. That's what it is.
Yes. If I were to be more simple, you were correct, but more simply said, in order for you to have this freedom with food, you had to let go of the desire to be thinner and the fear of getting fatter. You had to address both of them and let them be so that you didn't have to have this, kind of a dysfunctional, negative relationship with food.
Yeah.
So do you see that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you had to surrender this body image concept, the shame around the body, to secondarily have the release, the removed pressure off of food. If you, for example, if you were afraid right now to gain weight, would you have this freedom? No. It's almost like the room gets really small and all you can see is the food and what's in it. It's like putting your head in your mind, your focus of your thoughts are magnifying food. Would you agree? It's one way to...
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you were to create a visual, it's like your brain has a magnifying glass with what it focuses on. And if you are afraid to gain weight or are imposing a goal of being thinner than you are, that magnifying glass around food just opens up food and it becomes micromanaged. You see every little thing and every detail and what you can and cannot eat, and it becomes massive in your head. It's pressurized and perfectionistic. Yeah. So the only way to get rid of that is to accept the body for what it is, accept you could gain weight, accept that you're never going to be thinner than this. This is the same process I have to go through with people who are over 300 pounds and 400 pounds. They have to accept it. Otherwise, that magnifying glass in their focus, the magnified focus on food, doesn't go away. And you can imagine, too, when people get larger and larger and larger, the pressure to restrict food gets more intense because they, in their mind, in order to get thinner, they have to more radically restrict. This is so opposite of what the average person is aware of. Right? How many, you would look at someone who's 400 pounds and say, well, clearly they don't diet, right? But what you're not aware of is that they are imposing kind of anorexic levels of stress to not eat because they feel that bad about their weight. And their brain is no different than yours. So you know how your food obsession magnified? Well, guess what happens to theirs? It's worse because they have that much more shame and pressure to be thinner. And not only that, but the length of time that they have to be in that perfectionistic stress to restrict food, the length of time they have to live in that anorexic kind of radicalism around food restriction is 1 to 2 or more years. So can you see why they would feel more shame when they mess up? And what do you think happens? Well, fuck it. Might as well binge. Tomorrow I'll try again, because they have to enforce these kind of more intense, more restrictive, more strict food restrictions and diets to lose weight for longer periods of time.
Well, I have a question. I don't know if you know about how stress affects body chemistry. I would imagine you do after all these years of doing what you do. But is it possible that the chemistry that's created by this constant self-hatred and this machine that we all get in, when we stop doing that, simply the hormone stabilizing creates some sort of like balance inside your body? Because I've been sleeping so well, and my mind is so much more clear.
I love what you're saying, and that would be expected, right? Because you were in like a state of fight or flight, right? Stress.
Yeah.
That's what stress is, really. And it manifests, you could say, chemically, hormonally throughout the body, and the result is cognitive distortions. That's how it presents itself psychologically. All or nothing, black and white, forecasting assumptions, predicting the future, catastrophizing. All of those are cognitive distortions that happen because of this fight or flight mechanism and the hormones and how they change our behavior is because we're under threat, right? But your hormones, of course, your digestion stops. And obviously it's not all or nothing. It's not black and white. It's kind of like certain emotions are have a higher impact on certain biological reactions. Like the most intense emotions that, let's just say, affect your digestion, rage, anger, and fear. Yeah. Right? So your digestion is going to stop the more, let's say, resentment, anger, fighting, defensiveness, manipulative. You're more likely to have digestive problems. Your food doesn't digest. So keep that in mind when you pair that with someone who's doing that with a diet. They're going to be binging and not digesting any of their food. They're going to have major digestive problems. Maybe like SIBO, dumping, poor digestion.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just one thing. So there's also the adrenals and the effect of fight or flight on the fight side, where you have higher epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all of those kind of fight hormones that keep you awake. They do. They keep you awake. You're more alert. And so, your brain these mechanisms are wired to respond with perceptions of threat. Just the perceived threat. There doesn't have to be an actual threat. Just the idea that you could be under threat triggers a response. They're very sensitive. They're very effective and important in the survival of our species. So just perceived threat. And that's, it doesn't have to be, I'm being chased by a bear or a tiger, or, there's a big storm brewing and I got to find safety. It can be something as simple as, oh my God, these people think I'm inadequate. There's that tribal survival that we are oriented to have. So these same exact biological response to fear and anger can occur if you have a fight with your husband, right? But imagine that the source of your fight or flight is your actual body. My body is bad. It is taking things away from me. I'm angry. I'm a victim of it. Can you imagine how that you're living with the enemy? And again, it's a perceived enemy, because the truth is the body you're in is providing you consciousness, life, thoughts, awareness, sight, hearing, capacity to have language. I mean, it's doing everything for you for free. So where is the enemy? What is the enemy? What enemy did we just get rid of?
The one within.
Well, it's the belief system that says you're relative to this concept, you suck. So in terms of body image, the thin ideology is the enemy. So if you believe that your body sucks, you now have a fight or flight response to the body. And the way to think that you're going to get rid of that, right, is this dieting. Dieting actually is far more threatening to your life because it's making food the enemy, and food is required to live. And you're supposed to be restricting food like a famine, all while it's around you. So can you see where these are major primitive mechanisms being triggered by the whole concept of body image and weight loss, specific to thin supremacy? You know, body image to me is somewhat human. In, you know, it's an animal thing to want to blend into your background. So is it the body image, or is it the radicalism and narcissistic kind of approach to body image that's the problem?
It's the radicalism, because like if you look at most people in society, they're not model thin.
No,
they're not.
No one is. No,
that's not normal.
It's not. It's not just not normal. It's like maybe 3 to 5% of the human population is that thin genetically.
Yeah.
Where they don't have to starve themselves.
Yeah.
So you're saying that's the goal for 100%. So that means that 95% of all the people striving for that are failures. And they all believe it. And then they wonder, and they're trying to impose kind of, and the diet industry has radicalized big time.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Because I think of the diet industry isn't just, Weight Watchers who's actually become more realistic. It's the bloggers and this whole kind of radical anorexic kind of people out there that are promoting with science, like the wolf in sheep's clothing. And the HCG protocol could absolutely go into that. It's been abused by the weight loss industry and promoted like a diet, and it's not. It's a medical procedure. Right? So you can see it's radicalized the extremism.
What is it? If it's not a diet, and I understand, like I noticed that you had a video up. I saved it on YouTube.
Yeah, I wrote a book about it. I wrote a book about it because I believe it. Yes. Yeah, and
I have that. I read it like years ago.
Yeah, so it to me, and originally Dr. Simeon's the original doctor. This was a medical kind of procedure for people who he believed had these hormonal imbalances that made it very, very difficult. Their bodies, were a real limit, hormonally, and had all these hormonal issues. So in my point of view, this is a medical procedure to see if it can help the endocrine system. And I've seen major improvements with people who've done it, and it didn't necessarily produce the biggest weight loss. But there was big changes in how they felt and how they slept and their sex drive and different symptoms that they had that just completely disappeared after doing the protocol. And when you get someone who's 300 or 400 pounds, it's a way for them to actually address some of those issues like polycystic ovarian syndrome and really high testosterone levels that, however, The mental and emotional work has to be done ahead of time for it to be that. You know, if you go into the HCG protocol or any diet for that matter, thinking that by losing weight, you're going to be a more lovable, acceptable person and it's a way to inflate your pride, it's not for you.
Right.
And that's pretty much everybody, because we live in a culture that is extremely narcissistic in the way it motivates people, that you are to do well so that we'll love you in a superior way. You need to be superior and you need to be competitive with everybody because that's what makes you worthwhile, you know? And one of the ways that that's done, just one of many, is through thin supremacy. And body image has been around for thousands of years. So it's like, but the radicalism of it, like foot binding. Foot binding is really radical, don't you agree?
Yeah.
China did it for over 1,000 years. Very radical. The radicalism of thin supremacy, if only 5% naturally have that without mental illness, okay? It's a natural state. They're naturally thin, whatever. But that's what everybody's expected to look like. Doesn't that seem very radical?
Yeah, and it actually doesn't even go with like the new way that people are beginning to think. So
there's people that are like,
just beginning.
You got it. It is just beginning, kind of this like we're abandoning thin supremacy but even so, the amount of people suffering from eating disorders, checking into hospitals at least, has gone up 10 times over, I think, 6 years. I can't remember the numbers. It's massive. Primarily with the orthorexic influx. That's the obsession with healthy eating.
Yeah.
Like to where it limits your life and like a paranoia or like a paranoia around unhealthy food.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that. I see it all the time. It's like so many people are so afraid of what's in food. The other day I had a LaCroix and some girl was like, you can be eating that, drinking that. And I was like, okay, I'd rather die than to worry about this LaCroix. She probably thought I was crazy, but I was like, okay, thanks. I'll think about that. Right? She has no idea that she's in that warped survival mechanism, fearing food to a magnified degree. Right? You can recognize that when you've been there. It's like this magnifying glass that promotes the micromanaging of everything that's in everything because you're in such radical state of fear. Yeah. It's understandable why someone would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're drinking a LaCroix.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
I really I like what this is doing in my life. Another thing that's really crazy is, like, I have, what I thought was stress acne. It shows up on my chin, like, every once in a while, like, around that time of the month or whatever. Yeah. And it's not happening. Like, my skin is smoother and clearer, and my eyes are clearer, and I'm just, like, really shocked at how my inner stress level has gone from like 90 to like 20. Yeah. It's really fascinating.
Right, because you're not on a pill. We didn't give you, you're not on it. Are you on anti-anxiety meds?
No.
Okay, so imagine that we had given you a prescription, let's just say 3 weeks ago. Would you say it worked?
Yes.
Yeah, but this isn't a prescription. It's changing your perceptions. We just changed your perceptions.
Well, it's interesting.
I want to say that back again because you're the one who faced your fears and that ultimately changed your perceptions. We're not forcing a new perception on you, are we?
No, not at all.
We're just forcing you to face your fears, right? If you go back to our original consult, oh my God, you should listen to it now.
In 2 weeks, I will.
Okay.
I don't.
You're going to hear the difference.
What I said then.
Yeah, but you're going to hear the difference. You're going to feel it and hear it. Because you're going to hear how you were like, but don't I have to be healthy? But shouldn't I be worried? And I'm just like, no. Who told you? You know, kind of just questioning the whole point of what healthy is, what that is. Now, looking back, think about that energy. Think of the energy that backed your belief that I need to be concerned about health. That was coming from a survival mode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Fear.
Oh, there's fear about, I should be concerned about everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could listen to that and go, oh my God, I was so afraid that I'm clutching onto this diet industry as if they're the ones that are going to help me not be afraid, but they're actually feeding the fear with the fear mongering of food that they're selling.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like being in a barrel and rolling downhill.
Totally. I will agree with you. So, with my own personal experience, I only have my body to feel. And I remember within days of that recovery feeling like it was like easy. Before, it was like trying to swim in mud that you can't get anywhere. And it's extreme amounts of work and effort, and it's taxing. And it was like, within 48 hours, it was like I'm floating. It's literally, I'm floating. And there's no anxiety. I have no panic. I have no anxiety. I don't have this like radical heart palpitations anymore that I used to have, and where I started to breathe up in my throat. You know, none of that was occurring. It was completely gone. It was almost like it was miraculous. And I noticed that prior, every time I ate, it was like my body was hyper responsive to it. I could feel my body. Even if it was a controlled environment, I could feel how my body was responding to it. Clearly, when you're starving, you can feel those things, right?
Yeah.
Whereas afterwards, I'm eating more, I'm not regulating anything, and my body literally lost that feeling. I didn't have that feeling anymore. It's like this sense you can just feel. It was gone. So there's so much that shifted almost instantaneously once I faced my fears, accepted them permanently, so that I wouldn't have to fight them anymore permanently.
Yeah.
Right? Permanent.
Absolutely.
If you accept your fears permanently, then you essentially are free from your defense mechanisms permanently.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic.
I've noticed that one thing that, and I heard a video that you did, because I listen to your videos in between our sessions, because it just kind of supports the concept.
Yeah, and you can hear someone else with it, totally.
Yeah, and I really like that. But the one that you did about peanut butter, I was like, oh my God, that's my thing. I love peanut butter. Peanut butter has always been like my one thing. I'm like, okay, well, as long as I don't have any peanut butter, then everything's going to be okay. And, and I would crave it, and then I'd go and I'd get a teaspoon of it, and I'd go back and get another teaspoon of it,
and then you're like, screw it. Fuck it. I might as well do what I want.
Peanut butter toast, and, peanut butter on celery, and peanut butter, peanut butter noodles, but, so I went, and I've been not keeping it in the house, and I went and I bought a giant thing of, Skippy peanut butter, and it's been sitting there in the kitchen, and I'm like, I don't want it. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, yeah, but I can have it. I can have all of it if I want. And because I can have all of it, I'm like, well, but it's not really what I want right now. It's like blowing my mind.
I know, it's super easy. It's super easy. Well, this is the only thing I can reason around this, right? I have the same exact experience as you. I had exactly the same, and you are not the only client that I've worked with that has described the same exact thing. And I've had binge eaters who've been binge eating for decades experience the same thing. Now, keep in mind, as soon as they went back into, I need to lose the weight or keep this weight loss, what happened? They went back to binging. So So keep that in mind. If we keep body image out of this, that you have all that freedom, there's no pressure. You don't have to have it today. You have the rest of your life to enjoy food when it's appealing. And there's no harm to it. There's no bad attached to it. You can have it. There is no you can't have that. But the only way I can describe it is to look at the fundamentals of Maslow's hierarchies of need. Again, it's that foundation of our psychological well-being is founded on the security that we have with food. If you're insecure with food, food is going to be important because we have to have it to survive. Food and water. These are fundamental physiological life necessities. Yeah. Anorexics, for whatever reason, they have mastered repressing this because they isolate themselves. If they were to be around food, they would become bulimics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, anorexia is really good or they become, and bulimics with exercise. Because I know anorexics who are older and functioning and they will eat like a normal person, but they have to do hours of exercise. And they have tons of, actually, like osteoporosis, and they have all of the symptoms of it, but even with their exercise. However, this freedom, I believe, comes when you feel food is abundant. You have access to it now, today. There's enough. It's not going to go away anytime soon, and it's not bad.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. There was a dietitian who studied this, and it's called the Satter's hierarchy of food needs. And she basically took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and said, okay, well, here's a hierarchy of food needs for that primary need. Here, I write about it in my book when I talk about survival mode and food. You can Google it. It's just this write-up. She does a good job, and she describes that we need to have it. There's the psychology around quantity, that we can get more, that it's pleasurable, that it's safe to eat, that there's novelty foods, that we can have food by association, like popcorn at a movie. That's so normal, right? And some of those are fulfilling these needs that we psychologically need as human beings. There's a reason why our mouth has billions, multiple millions, hundreds of millions of receptor sites that go to the narcotic area of the brain. And that's not a problem. That's wired intentionally because that's how important food is to our psychological well-being.
Yeah.
Because we need it physically. So by allowing yourself to live in abundance without the mind of someone who is in restriction, because that's not abundance, is it?
No.
That's living in deprivation. They've studied so much of this eating behavior, not just in like the Minnesota Starvation Project, which is very famous, how these men who voluntarily starved themselves studied and how obsessive they got around food, but how much they binge ate after the fact for months on end. They had insatiable, wow. Yes. But then on top of that, eventually it did go away. As they regulate, it became more normalized that food wasn't going anywhere, but the fact that, food is so demonized, and there's an entire industry of demonizing food out there. It's this weird health industry that is making so much money and getting so much power around fear-mongering food that stimulates this survival response. It's almost hard not to be impacted by it, right? Like that one woman who was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're drinking a LaCroix. They're so bad for you. It impacted her to where she was fearful for me. She didn't know who she was working with. I'm like, okay, I would rather die.
Well, the thing that this reminds me of, I pinpointed it the other day. If you go to the mall and you want to buy things, but you don't have enough money to really shop for whatever reason, you see a million things that you want and you desperately need them. And you plot all the different ways, or I do this, all the different ways that I can okay, well, if I put it on this credit card, put this money here. But then if you go with $500 or $1,000 cash in your purse, and you're like, I'm going to go shop. And then nothing is really appealing.
No, because you're like, now I got to really think about. That's exactly right. It's the mind of someone in abundance versus the mind of someone in deprivation or scarcity. So we're very sensitive psychologically to being scarce with food, and it's primitive, and we all have it. It's not a disorder. And I really, really believe that the whole terminology of eating disorder needs, as it relates to body image, needs to be rethought out. I know there are certain eating disorders that have really nothing to do with body image, like pica, and there's all sorts of...
When people eat baby diapers, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yes, or rocks, or there's certain eating disorders. To me, that's a different class. But when it comes to like anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, binge eating disorder, and eating disorders not otherwise specified, which means it's somewhere in this huge spectrum of this specific mentality, I don't believe it's a disorder. I think it's a syndrome. It's a survival syndrome.
Yeah.
Much of these mechanisms we're all wired to have.
That would be a great title for a book from you.
Well, this one's going to be Thin Supremacy. But I'm presenting it as a syndrome. That's what it's such a boring book. I mean, seriously, all this information that you're going to get from the YouTube videos are going to be in this book, but you're going to go, I'd rather just listen to Robin talk about it for an hour than to read this, highly academic kind of presentation of a syndrome. I don't know. But yeah. Because to me, it's like, well, it's competition between survival with food and survival being loved by your tribe, by your pack.
Yeah.
Your pack is saying you got to be thin, which means you got to starve yourself. So you have these primitive mechanisms around starving yourself that are very large and much larger in need than being loved by your family. And so you have this kind of pendulum swing going between feeding your body and feeding the narcissism of the culture that says you have to be thin in order to be loved.
Yeah.
Or have any value as a woman. And that competition, I think, is where the syndrome occurs. It's like clashing survival mechanisms, and one is threatening the other. Food threatens your lovability. Body fat threatens your lovability, But you need food more than anything. More than you need lovability to survive, to be honest with you. Isn't it fascinating? So as we address this body image, this is why it's so important to address the body image. You're really addressing your animal nature to want to be loved. And when you say you'll never be thinner and you're going to get fatter, it's like saying you're not going to be loved anymore. But you have to really weigh that out with this horror story around food. It is a horror story. That your whole life has been hijacked by this obsession around food and what you can and cannot eat and the shame around it. That is a secondary issue coming from the fear of abandonment, rejection, and disapproval because you're going to have too much body fat. You following me?
Yeah, totally.
So you address that. Right. Well, you address, like you said, it's like the shame underneath all this. Well, when you address that and you forgive yourself and you forgive, your family and the story, and you kind of love and give it compassion and humility, that's how you get rid of all this. You have to secure your third hierarchy of need, because to me, that's the main source. That's the only reason why food is threatened. You would not be threatening food if you didn't feel the urge to lose weight or to be thinner. Or if you didn't have fear of gaining. Food is delicious. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not like we get pleasure out of not eating. You only get pleasure out of not eating if it's narcissistic pleasure. That means I'm winning. Right. I'm winning. I'm thinner than them. And anorexics compete like that all the time. It's narcissism. It's narcissistic. Narcissism is not that big of a deal. It's the narcissistic tendency, which is to compare yourself to others and to make them less than and you better than. It's narcissistic. But anyways, so you transcend that, and then you address the issue with food. And you'll find it's very, actually not as hard as you would have anticipated.
Yeah, this is definitely not what I not at all.
I know, way easier, right?
So fascinating. I tried something like this back when I was like 23. I was working at this at American Festival Cafe in Rockefeller Center, and I felt that I was overweight, and I felt that way for a couple of years living in New York City. And I was like, finally, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna just stop this. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just see what does my body really want? And so I would get off the subway and I would get one Mrs. Fields brand new brownie, like super hot, right out of the oven, and I would savor it with a cup of coffee over like 45 minutes, just like take my time, and just every bite I would let just kind of disintegrate onto my tongue, and really just appreciated it so much. And I felt that freedom, but it was within a few weeks of feeling that I all of a sudden thought, wait a minute, no, I can't keep doing this.
Because I need to lose weight.
But actually, I was losing weight eating my brownie diet because I was so happy.
Oh, I see. So sometimes what happens with people when they give themselves this freedom, if they start to lose weight, they get excited and then they try to impose a restriction. Because they think that they have to maintain the loss, or that there's hope that they could lose weight. And so then they start to binge again.
Yeah, and so I want to make sure, like, I've been in this place. It was a different kind of place, though, because, 23 as compared to now, it's like, I feel like it's the same as talking to a 6-year-old in my mind with the stuff that I've gone through since then. Mm-hmm, but I know that I have that ability in me to regress very rapidly into like the whole machine. And so I'm really glad that we have like a full, like, I guess 16 or 17 sessions on whatever it is. To really, I want to lock this in. I like this freedom. I liked it then when I was on Mrs. Fields Brownie brunch. And I love the way I feel right now. I love it. And I did, it's like knowing. And I'm so glad that I did that then, so that at least I see, like, okay, I've done that before. And the only other time I've done that in my life was before I was, like, 3 years old. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons, like, I enjoyed that cheesecake so much yesterday with my friends. Because it was, like, I remember being just under 3 years old the first time I tasted cheesecake. And I thought it was, like, heaven in my mouth. Yeah. Literally. Well, I love cheesecake. That much of it, because it is thick. It's rich. Amazing and satisfying, all that yummy fat, sugar, and cheese. It's like cheese. It's like everything you could possibly want in one taste. And I agree. It's so interesting. It really is. And I love this, and I just want to really, like I said, lock it in. So what I'm going to suggest you do is really ask what you would rather. Do you want to be thin, or do you want freedom? Because you can't want both. Happy, and I can be happy and free right now, right here. Forever. Yeah. So what you do is you make thinness not a condition you'll ever aspire for. Even if it happens naturally, it's not your aspiration. And you don't attach to it. And you don't attach when you regain the weight. And when you gain weight later, you just accept that your body is going to be whatever it is. And you don't have to get involved with it. I'm not saying you don't go take medicine if you need medicine, or that you don't, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about body image. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I'm not that radical. I know, me neither. A lot of people are radical, and those are the things they think. Are you saying that I shouldn't even, like, brush my teeth? I'm like, well, someone's radical. No, I'm talking specifically about body image, that when it comes to how the symbolism of thinness or fatness or anything in between, do you want that on your resume? It's not necessary. If you do, you lose the freedom.
So you have to ask, what do I want? You have to really know what you want. If you're in your mind saying, well, can't I have both? Nope, you cannot want thinness. That's coming from the narcissism and the need to gratify that idea that you're special and needed and wanted and loved and important, right? You cannot want that and get freedom. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Because if you want that thinness, there's no way you can get around the eating issues. It's impossible.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Absolutely
So
true.
I know. It is true. So I knew for me, when I made the decision around my body, it was a permanent decision, because I to this day would rather be 500 pounds than to go back into that darkness that I had in the perfect body. So I've given my body the freedom to be what it is. And I listen to it, and I go to sleep when I'm tired, and I eat when I'm hungry, and I eat what sounds good to me at the time. I do the best to listen so I don't overeat. I don't overdrink either. I don't like being drunk. I just listen to my body. It's really naturally motivated, because who likes to be sick?
Right, exactly.
I don't. I mean, it's pretty natural to say, oh, I feel nauseous. Okay, maybe you shouldn't drink that much. Or I'm so full that my stomach's distended and I need to lay down. And do you like that feeling? Well, no, then use that as a boundary around what you're not going to do. Right? So it's not about dieting so much as it is not hurting your body physically. You can feel it. So for me, on that hunger scale, I go between a 6 and a 7 when I eat. I rarely go above that, because I don't like to feel sick. So it doesn't matter what I'm eating. And it changes depending on my menstrual cycle. And there's so many different things in a day that can change those rhythms of hunger, and how much food you need to eat and how little food you need to eat. Menstruation, ovulating, full moon, sun exposure, cold exposure, traveling, lack of sleep.
It's totally true. And it's a very interesting, and you know what, actually, thinking about that very logically then, I mean, I was out working in 20-degree weather in Times Square for hours, and what's the most logical thing? Look at the Eskimos, how high fat their diet is. Of course they want a cheesecake. That's what my body needed. It needed that.
Yeah, and you go south of the border and you want chips and guac and a beer.
Right.
And fruit. And fruit.
Yeah, right.
In the summer, in the sun, and your body naturally does this stuff. It's like when you look at the diet industry, it is a forced, imposed, mentally constructed idea of what the body needs, and who the hell knows that? Nobody. It's so dynamic. It's so curvilinear. It's beyond our capacity to really understand how this all works.
I got this theory about the pharmaceutical industry. I've heard stories about how if cancer was cured tomorrow, our entire economy would fail. And I think for the people that don't yet have a sickness, they create some sickness, which is the diet industry.
Yeah, the fear-based, fear-mongering. Yeah, you could get sick. You need to get this done. You could get sick. And that's just how it's been promoted. We're actually in general, we have much less, that's so relative. We don't have the same diseases as they did 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's true.
Because of modern medicine.
Yeah.
But modern medicine is also, if you think about that, has really restricted the businesses from the 1900s that profited on diseases. So they got rid of the diseases, and then they started focusing on body weight.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you need to be thinner. Drink this shake. You're going to die. You'll die. The height and weight charts really shifted a lot of things. And that was promoted by the insurance companies that were wanting people to invest in insurance because they should fear that they're going to have diseases.
Oh my God.
Right? And that's when the diet industry was born. The weight loss industry was born in 1942. A little bit sooner, but in general, it boomed at when the height and weight charts came out. people were told, and there was this divisive line. If you were below the line, you were healthy. If you were above the line, didn't matter. You were unhealthy and you were going to get diseases. And you can imagine as a parent, if you had a daughter or son, and mostly it was the daughters, this was, really promoted with the women, the girls. If you're above that line, it was almost like a scourge. Oh my God, you're overweight. The whole concept of overweight was born at 1952. Healthy weight or not healthy. So the concept of unhealthy became a social stigma. Thus, the battle with weight began in 1942. And it wasn't because of the science so much as it was just this statistics that, if you've taken any statistics courses, you can skew anything you want the way you want to. And even then, thousands of studies have refuted it. And it has been updated, but mostly men were used to create this, and it was mostly white men. So, different races were told they were overweight when in reality they were totally healthy. And and there were so many people who were totally healthy, no symptoms, no nothing, and they were told they were unhealthy because of their weight. Then they were put on a diet, even though there was nothing wrong with them. And you can imagine all of a sudden now we have an emotional eating problem. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's chapter 5, 6, and 7 in my book right there. The one I'm writing. So.
Cool. Really interesting.
It's fascinating.
Done with it?
Oh my God, that is the question that I'd love to have an answer for you. I'm just now finalizing chapter 17. That's the chapter on narcissism, which is really could be a whole book in itself, but I'm trying to apply it to eating disorders in a way that makes it easier for me to talk about Stockholm syndrome. So I'm skimming over important things and just it's a really important chapter. I don't know. I hate writing this book. I literally loathe it. It's miserable.
Really?
Yes, it's miserable. Oh, it's heavy stuff. I mean, I when it is done, I will be very proud of myself. But it's just so much. There's so much that goes into this. And the funny thing is, you and I talking, it's simple. We get through this. The individual interaction I have with people is very effective. But there are some people that it doesn't click with. They're not ready yet. But this book would be good for them too, so that they can process the information, right?
Yeah.
I've had clients that came to me and they were not ready. It was like throwing cold water on them. Oh my God. This is so much. It's so intense. And it's but they usually didn't spend time watching my YouTube channel either.
Oh. Yeah, that should be required before anything.
Right. And that's where the book comes in. Because I think when people read the book, it won't, if they want my help, it won't be so in your face. We're going to quit this whole thing right now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, and you got to be ready.
Well, I'm going to go start driving my daughter around and her friends to look up. And it seems like next week, okay?
Yeah. In fact, that time was fine this morning. I was just coming out of this yoga class and I needed to take a quick shower, and because